In Tuesday's correspondence, Sunny the Labrador and I walked the length of Rosemarkie Beach, and a few folk were asking where MacColl was. Don't worry about her, she's totally fine. She's just a few years older than Sunny and she's got a wee touch of arthritis developing in her front right shoulder. So we made the celebrity decision to consciously uncouple the dogs for this particular long walk. So showbiz. By the end of Tuesday's instalment, we'd looked at the beach cafe, the play park, the tennis court, football pitch, basketball court, cage thing, the jumping in swimming rock, and Sunny had lost track of a tennis ball twice. Back to the beach for the next episode.
With the daily updates, you can't make up, it's the Black Isle Correspondent. She lives in Fort Rose and tells us what goes on. If your isolation causes desperation, try the Black Isle Correspondent. If you're feeling grumpy, you'll find some company here.
Retracing my steps, as for the third time, Sunny has come back from a chuck without the ball. Kind of despair sometimes. Well, this is dangerous. Ah! You've got it now. She's found it, just as I've risked life and limb on a CBD rock. You're playing with me. You're doing this on purpose because I'm not paying attention to you because I'm looking at the camera. Or maybe I'm giving you too much credit and you're just thick and you've lost the ball 3 times. It's like a wee family, a wee art installation or something. How bonny. How about that for a spot to sit and enjoy the view? Perfect. We have reached the end of the sandy bit of Rosemarkie Beach. That's the end of the bit that is easily accessible with a mad wee Labrador like Sunny. You can continue round that way. Gets a wee bit scrabbly over the rocks, but you can walk all the way along towards the sea cliffs at Ethe out that way. It is really easy to get caught out by the tide though, so take care if you're considering that on your visit to the Black Isle. This is where Sunny and I turn around and head for home. But not before I tell you a wee bit about the caves. There's a series of caves just further along the beach there. In fact, there's one just in there. One of the caves looked like it had maybe been a dwelling in the past because there was evidence that there had been a door on the front of it at some point. So a few years ago, a team of local amateur archaeologists, who I like to call Rosemarkie-ologists, you're welcome, spent the weekend digging in the cave. Just as they were leaving, one of the archaeologists noticed something in the back of the cave. This was a fragment of human skull. When you find human remains like that, you've got to get the police involved. Out they came, police tape, white boiler suits, the works. It was like CSI Rosemarkie down here. Anyway, turns out this was not a modern crime that they were investigating. These were the remains of a Pictish man. Here was a guy who had experienced a horrifically violent and gruesome death. He'd received spear blows through the head, he'd been battered and beaten, but then he'd been buried with a great deal of care, laid out almost a ceremonial sort of burial. And he had been preserved very well in the sand. So much so, the science buff and big brain guys at Dundee University were able to take his remains and do a 3D facial reconstruction on his skull. She's lost that ball again. Now, the image that they came up with was one of a very handsome man. It was on the cover of the Sunday papers. He was certainly better looking than anyone from Rosemarkie that I've seen. He was also much taller than the folk that were local to the area at the time. So he was obviously a very exotic specimen. Maybe from Nairn or Dingwall or something like that. Anyway, whoever he was, he's certainly got an interesting story. Lauren MacColl wrote him a tune called The Rosemarkie Man. I mean, that is really the least he deserved after what he went through. Just before the lockdown was announced, Lauren and I walked along to the end of the beach with our fiddles and played the tune for him. Sunny, have you found that ball yet? It's time to go home. Wimbledon's maybe off this year, but the tennis ball companies have got nothing to worry about. The rate we go through them, they'll all be kept in business for a long time yet. Right, there's no fetch on the way back then. Poor dog.